Listen, this is not the way of it. This is not the way of it. All that shouting, all that noise.
You just want to shake things up. So, and I also think when I say the word punk, I think about a fierce kind of independence where you don't really care and you're not doing it because a manager told you to do it. You're not doing it because a record label told you to do it. You're not doing it because a producer told you to do it. You're not doing it for approval of any kind. So it's all of that to me.
You're a dirty boy, you're a filthy boy, 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 you're a dirty boy, you're a filthy boy. You're a filthy boy, you're a dirty boy, you're a filthy boy, you're a dirty boy, you're a filthy boy.
We all wanted something more than just punk, more than prog rock, more than improvisation. And so noise is actually a very natural progression.
When we first started doing this, there weren't really that many groups that played what we played. I'm not sure that there are that many that play what we play now, but this whole idea of this noisy concept of music, especially one that eschews a normal rhythm or melody or most musical reference points, there was a tendency for audiences to be somewhat hostile.
The darkness and the anger, you know, was just the music is what helped me through that. I mean, that's why I think I was drawn to such darkness and such aggression. I think it was exercising these feelings that I didn't do anything with. They were just there. I just crammed them down, and now I was just, you know, I had this you know, dark energy that you know, needed to come out, and I think it came out in the early music.
You know, it was kind of a cool thing to like want to play a guitar or, you know, music, you know, play along with it somehow. And you know, that's how I kind of got interested in it. And I was playing in a punk rock band at the time, and we had all of our instruments around and at my house. And I noticed if I could lean a bass guitar across a bass amp or a guitar amp, that it would make the most insane sound. That was my introduction to noise. That's how you know, at the same time, I loved Throbbing Gristle and SBK at the same time, at that time, but I hadn't consciously thought of like, well, I want to make noise. But I noticed if I leaned a guitar across the amp, it made a howling, crazy sound. And it was music to me.
Fred Frith was in like '79. He played at the Andor Gallery, I think, here in Seattle. Just tabletop guitar, prepared guitar, and blah, 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 you know, blip blop, you know, blah blah blah, with all this. And I was in that. Ooh, that's what I want to do. So I just went downtown and bought an electric 12-string guitar that's sitting there. And that's what been my main instrument. And I have open tunings, and I just weave things in and out and play with mallets and prepared. It's all prepared guitar. I'm very much a purist. I do not run it through any boxes. It's all physics. It's all physics of the strings that comes out.
Certainly in the live context, it has more to do with performance art. And otherwise, I think of it as noise. I guess noise would be the hybrid between the music and the performance art and the philosophy and everything else all thrown into a bucket. Growing up, I was never into music. I was into talk radio. I think during my single digits and into my early teens, really all I listened to was AM talk radio, mostly because it got so ridiculous. There were so many radio talk shows at the time. The various hosts had to really compete with getting the most outrageous and colorful characters they could find. Yeah, it wasn't atypical to find on the dial somebody claiming to be interviewing an astral projection from Saturn or Neptune.
It was just part of my life. It was part of my life from day one. You know, music was always played in the house, and I would say the primary influence would have to have been my dad, who had a beautiful singing voice and played guitar and played piano and organ, and he was the person who first, you know, literally started teaching me music. And I remember when I was still a little baby, you know, little toddler, he sat me on his lap at the piano and was like, sing that note, hit that note. And so, and I could hit the note, I could sing what he was playing on the keys. And I think he was trying to determine if I was tone deaf or if I had, you know, the ability to hear music and to actually repeat the tone that I heard. And apparently I did, and I remember that day. And after that, when he was, you know, convinced that, wow, she can hear music and she understands music, then that was encouraged.
The first time that music really affected me deeply was It was 1967. It was my brother-in-law, and he just got the reel-to-reel to Sgt. Pepper's, and I would come over to their house, and to keep me out of their hair, they would put headphones, big-ass cans on my head, and I listened to Sgt. Pepper's like all the way through on a reel-to-reel tape. And it just blew my mind. Every time I went over there, I'd want to listen to that thing. I would sit in that chair, and he'd run it over and over and over again. I wouldn't leave the chair while we were we were at their house. Yeah, at that same time, I was taking organ lessons, which I took for a number of years. Ended up playing organ in church for Good Friday when I was 14 years old. So I was a certified geek, you know.
Well, we actually met when we were 5. We were in the same kindergarten class together. And if you're familiar with our duo record, Bells Together, our kindergarten class picture was the cover art. So we sort of lost touch. And then I think we got hooked back up during summer school, discovering that we actually played the saxophone. So we found ourselves in band together. Most of that band time I spent in exile because I got kicked out of band pretty much every year from 7th grade through 12th for playing what we kind of do now in Borbido. Probably as early as age 14, we were already experimenting with the bells together technique. We put the bells of the horns together to see what it would sound like, and it really did sound pretty interesting. And so imagine utilizing that technique in marching band.
Well, my musical influences was really this guy that I grew up with, and I was in middle school and he was in high school, and he was really into weird music, and so he's kind of turned me on to like Soft Machine and Robert Wyatt and Faust and Tangerine Dream and Roxy Music, Brian Eno and Gentle Giant, Peter Hamill, and Vannegar Jenner, and like these are the people I listened to in the 70s, so that's when my music thing really began.
Well, what if I, you know, took this tape recorder and like put it on a string and put it down in the pump house, because we had a well. You know, we lived in a rural Michigan. You know, it was like we had a pump house. Our water came from a well, and the pump house made this crazy sound, and you could hear it. It was like this cycle, and it's on it's on the Screw Machine tapes. That's how I started Screw Machine, because I was doing that, and I was working at a place. It was a Screw Machine factory. You drive into the parking lot, and all you could hear was like, shh. That's all you could hear. And you got in there, you put the earplugs in, and you went to work for 8 hours, 12 hours.
I was doing lounge music, cover versions. I was doing jazzy stuff. All this was before I started onto the experimental terrain. And the experimental terrain was me having my ears just opened up and my mind opened up to something that seemingly had nothing to do with formal music training. That was really, really important. If I had to pick a term, if I had to pick a category, I preface it with that, it would be that. Because I can't say any of the others. If I'm really going to be pure about it, it would just be my name. But then if you don't know the body of work that's happened so far, that's not going to really help. So in trying to at least give some kind of about to people that have no idea, I decided that there is no other expression that they could in their mind understand other than the word experimental. You flirt with different styles, you flirt with recognizable things like a guitar through an amplifier. But then it's not going to be that. It's not going to be that easy. It's not going to be that easy. You can't, the rest of the song is not going to sound that way, or what it's saying isn't going to sound that way. You're going to be thrown off if you try to categorize it. So that is what it means to me.
The early professional wrestlers like Gorgeous George were able to transcend the boundaries of what constituted the stage area. It went beyond the ring to the audience. They made the audience the majority of the performance. The real wrestling match didn't happen inside the ring, it happened outside. It happened with how they enticed the audience, how they incorporated the audience and the audience's reaction to be the center point of the actual performance. And I always wanted, especially in the early days, I wanted my performances to entice and encourage and incorporate the audience, more so than whatever was actually on the stage. I found what was happening in the audience to be the real performance a lot of the time.
Well, I guess it was 1970, Frank Zappa wrote an article in, I believe it was Stereo Review, called My Teenage Idol, Edgar Varese. And so being a Zappa fan at that point, I had to go, and I searched out Varese albums. I got a None Such album, which I still have and I love.
I think we both drew on a lot of different influences, and many of them were inspirational to both of us. Hendrix certainly was a major figure. Don was a huge MC5 fan.
And what I also liked about both Hendrix and the MC5 was that volume, that sound, the noise, the all-encompassing view that anything could come into play with the music. couldn't figure out a name. Every time we'd play out, we'd play out with a different name. We'd just make up a name for the group for the gig. We were with a 3-humped lowercase m with an umlaut for a couple of weeks. And all leading up to the release of our first album. And I came up with the concept for the cover, which was each of us holding little boxes which were filled with earthworms. That was the cover. The name Borbido Magus, which is the original Celtic name of the city of Worms or Worms in what was East Germany, was floated, just that word was floated on the cover. And one astute music reviewer referred to the group as Borbido Magus. And we thought that actually made a lot of sense, so we kept it.
Let me introduce, while we have time, this is Don Dietrich on saxophone, Thomas Miller, my name's Jim Slaughter. And we are very appreciative that
Inspiration. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
just give us a minute to finish this.
Shall we? We shall.
1, 2, 1, 2.
It always seemed to me like we were doing what we were supposed to be doing, but that nobody got it. Like why doesn't anybody get this? And then when you get a response from like Europe, from Germany, and they're like, yeah, we want to put your record out. You're like, well, why do they get it? And we can't get a show in Detroit. I don't know why. I grew up thinking like we should be accepted, you know, in Detroit, in Michigan. We should be accepted, and we definitely we never were. Never. We couldn't fucking get arrested in Detroit, right? Industrial. Back in those days, if you told people that you were in an industrial band, they would look at you like you had two heads. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? What is an industrial band? You know, you couldn't say we play noise. They'd walk away like, okay, whatever. But now people have an idea of that. But back then, this is a mock-up for the German pressing of Tribal Warning Shot.
Be
machines have a personality. At least the good machines had a personality. A lot of the analog stuff at the in the beginning of the digital era. You know, the harmonizer, Jen used it so much that we couldn't really use it. Genesis Peorage, Fleming Gristle, used the harmonizer like crazy on his vocals. He'd just take that thing and just let it feed back, and it had a great sound, but it was such a TG sound, we couldn't, well, I didn't feel good about using it too much, so we had to use it in ways that he didn't use it, which was tough. The digital equipment just was too needy for me. I wanted something that would help me when the machines that would talk. I wanted to be able to let machines talk. Digital machines that we had back then didn't talk. They only did what you wanted them to do. And I wasn't a composer. I wasn't really interested in composing. So I did what I could with these machines, but they were so, the joy was out of it. The obsession was out of it for me. Going into the studio now was something I did. I felt like I wanted to keep it going for my bandmates, and I thought this was something we should be doing rather than me just being obsessed with the machines. So it was a long, slow downward spiral. I was never crazy about playing live. The way we ended up playing live towards the end was with a lot of backing tapes, and this was common for people like us, but it seemed to be such a false way to do it. Much of the show was already on tape. I didn't like it. It couldn't change like a real band could change. A band can change tempos from night to night if they want. They have more freedom. We were locked in the same damn set. If you followed us on tour, you'd hear the same set every show. Once in a while I'd have some fun on stage, but a lot of times I'm not. I didn't do this to be on stage. I didn't do this because I want people to see me performing. I couldn't care less about it, really. I did that mostly for promotion. I did it for Scott, He loved being on stage. He was great at it. For me, I couldn't care less. I'd rather be in the studio and just, making those machines talk.
This is our catalog. Citizens for Nonlinear Futures was our catalog. And we had cartoons like, ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. The revolution has triumphed, and so not to inconvenience anyone, nothing has been changed. I was the official poster girl for the Showbox downtown. I was the very first poster girl in 1980, and I would get into the shows free if I hang up all the posters. So I was probably the first people that started gluing posters to bank signs and stuff like that all over. But here's some of these old posters. It was the improvisation more than anything else that gelled with everything else that we were trying to figure out about life at that time. Improvisation was for us sort of a real life way or process of exercising anarchy, freedom, self-reliance, trust in the folks that you're playing with, trust in the audience, because it's really, improvisation, that's a big part of what happens. And so for us, that was a process of anarchy. The unbearable grief, I run away inside. Shall I live that long?
I was visiting my mother, and I think I was looking at a video of a show that Swans had done, and my mother said from another room, and then came in, just, you know, seeing what was on the screen, said, and what do you call that? And see, that's an example. Like, she didn't even, and she was specifically saying, what do you call what he's doing? Because she did not hear that as singing, what Michael was doing. Because he was, what he was doing wasn't her idea of singing. It wasn't singing in the way that Frank Sinatra or Bing Crosby or anything. It wasn't singing to her ears. So then you have that where even singing is hard to, you're vocalizing. So you say, I'm a vocalist. Because if you say you're a singer, okay, why don't you say, I use my throat, my mouth to create sounds. I mean, you can keep on going with it, because even singer, see, is limited to a lot of perceptions of what they don't really see it as singing.
How many kisses did I deliver on your scratchy cheek? Before you kicked me hard in the teeth. A lover I wailed, and you laughed like always. Just like a beast. In my capacity as a martyr.
I don't think about the reality or the perception of life in other people's heads. I'm pretty much focused on creating something and analyzing something pretty much all the time. I live with this expansion of possibilities pretty much in everything that I'm going through. So it's like you almost have created some kind of a universe where it's in your head, and that sort of makes it easy to create. It makes it natural to create. It makes it natural to perform. A question I've been asked throughout my career is about this idea about stage fright. I don't know what that is. If you feel completely comfortable in yourself and you're not hiding anything, I could fall asleep on a stage naked and the world can watch me. I don't really care. And I was doing performance art in galleries nude, and it wasn't a statement about being nude. It's never a statement about being anti-establishment.
How many shows have you done now? What is this, 10,000?
It's actually number 410. But who's counting? I've had long periods, especially my younger days, in my teens and 20s, I spent a lot of time homeless. And that can be stressful, to say the least. But my work actually always got me through the rough times, especially during the years when I was homeless. The networking got me gigs, so it got me like money to travel, and it gave me at least a long list of couches that I could crash on. I could never stay in any one place for a very long period of time. I had to keep moving, go to the next town, stay with the next host, do a show or two, move on to the next town. This would take me across America and Europe, back and forth for years during, well, especially the late 80s and early 90s. Creatively, I always think that, you know, oh, maybe I've said everything I need to say, but then something else will pop in my head, or something else has happened in the real world and I need to react to or investigate or what have you. I've never seen my art as a means of making a statement. I've never been interested in making a statement. It's been more about making a journey. And so even when times are rough, I just see that as part of the journey.
I definitely don't like just using the word, the term noise with what I do. Still kind of define myself more like as an industrial artist. I mean, I still have to have some kind of structure to my sound. To me, old school industrial has structure. I can hear structure, whether anybody else can or not. The Witches of Malibu started out as a joke that was going to just be like a joke band, a fake joke band. And for some reason I thought of Witches of Malibu, and I thought of these like floating hats. This is part of the Witches of Malibu kind of current setup. This little suitcase, there's other stuff. It's a digital delay, but it's a sampler too. You can sample things with it. This is a delay system, and then these are just like mini synthesizers.
I think that there was a darkness to my personality. I mentioned earlier in the interview that I was told I was adopted when I was 15 years old. At the time, it really didn't affect me much. I kind of ate it and went on. I really didn't even think about it. When I would tell my friends in high school, I think I told one of them when I was like 17 years old, but he's asking about my nationality or something. And I was like, oh, but I was adopted. He goes, well, you never told me that. I know, I just forgot. I actually would forget. I buried it so deeply. But, you know, that kind of psychological impact doesn't just go away. You know, you've got the one thing that most of us can be sure of in our lives is these people that are raising you, unless you're told otherwise, are your actual biological parents. They're great parents. They're to the day that my dad died, he was a great parent. My mom's still great. But, you know, you can't trust anything. If you're told this at 15 years old, and I didn't have an inkling, I had no idea. So it does things to you. I blocked it right out. I went, okay, no, that's fine. Can I go now? Left the house, and you you know, just kind of buried it. I didn't really think about it. But you know, it didn't stay buried. You know, as soon as I left the house, I went to college, and you know, it was, you know, all the alcohol I could drink, and the darkness and the anger, you know, was just the music is what helped me through that. I mean, that's why I think I was drawn to such darkness and such aggression. As far as pouring myself into an art or consuming an art, back then it was very, very, very dark. It, you know, wasn't until maybe Tribal Warring Shot where I started kind of coming out of that, and you know, it not like I became Mr. Light, but you know, I was becoming more well balanced by that time. Just on my own, I guess I just beat it out of myself, you know, just doing delving into such darkness for so long.
Existential stuff or metaphysics and stuff like, well, this is the stuff that we talked about. I mean, in depth, in all of our lyrics and stuff like, was the past, the future, the moment, this time and dimension. So we were like really wondering about time and dimension and anatomy and consciousness and where does consciousness come from. And evolution and entropy was always like a really big thing. We wrote, you know, we read Wilhelm Reich, you know, religiously. You know, it was like. You know, so these are a lot of the weird formations that we were part of our music.
I think we play intense music because it's exhilarating. It's the music that we would love to hear and that we respond to when we go to hear some music or to put on a record. It's cathartic. It's you know, it's inspiring. And
It's what we'd want to hear if we were so fortunate to be in the audience. And I think that this is largely stemming from the frustration growing up and not having any place to hear music that was as intense as that. You know, most of our idols were dead before age 7, but before 1970. And so, you know, Jim and I, for years, would go into the city to hear concerts. We get a tip, you know, and occasionally we might hear something marginally interesting, but it never quite got to the point or the intensity level of the music that we wanted to hear. Just couldn't find it. And And I guess on some level, if you can't find it yourself, you just have to go out and make it. Of course, the downside is you still can't hear it from an audience perspective, but it's as close as we can come.
Every show is completely different, and that is what I do. I don't do the same, and I don't, and that's just the way it is. So if performance for me is, it's an organic thing. If I'm swept away by something, I read the room. You're feeling an energy. You're aware of you as this vehicle, but you're not limited to what, you know, you exactly, it has to be exactly the same every night.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
It's a natural thing. It's not forced. It's just like, it's sound that comes out, and sometimes it means it's just like it's a natural thing through jamming or just recording naturally. Other times it's organic in that sometimes you're using sounds, found sounds. Like, it sounds really cool if I stick my microphone into that box fan. I mean, I don't know. I have a problem with experimental when people get super serious about it. You know, they don't, you know, you're not really, you're just making noise. You know, you're making noise in some form of noise. You want to call it art? Okay. You want to call it experimental? Okay.
The aggression of being on the road all the time, I realize now we warm up to the Minutemen, and they are on the road all the time. These bands would come home, they'd take a couple months off, work in copy shops or whatever, and they'd be back, you know, record maybe, and then get back right back on the road again. And it's not a lifestyle I wanted to be involved in. I knew that to be true to Scott and Clay, that's what we'd have to do. So I just kind of let it fall off. It just kind of decayed.
What I found early on and throughout my whole musical career was I never intended or never even dreamed of making money off of my music. In fact, if I did, it would corrupt it. And I always felt that, and I still feel that.
I'm really not interested in changing anybody else's mind. I'm more interested in changing my own mind. And I think in the last 35 years that I've been doing this, I've found peace of mind, and through the hardships and through the victories. Overall, most of the time, I think I have peace of mind, and I think that's the most important thing.